that person's going to have a very big salary. So it is a lot of expenses. Yes.
Now, so is LocalMonero facing all these same expenses and compliance constraints?
Not at the moment, because we're not regulated in the same way that LocalBitcoins was regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just a peer-to-peer trading platform where it's just a forum to buy and sell for people, and the trades are settled in a non-custodial way. Whereas LocalBitcoins had rather a different system, and they operate under a different jurisdiction, obviously. So for now, at least, we don't face the same compliance costs. No, that may change in the future, of course. And if that does change in the future, well, we're probably also going to have to shut down. Yeah, I can certainly see that happening.
This week on MoneroTalk is sponsored by Cake Wallet. Store, send, receive, and exchange your Monero and Bitcoin safely on iOS and Android too. Cake Wallet is open source, and you always control your own keys. And by StealthEX, an instant exchange where privacy is the top concern. Go to stealthex.io to instantly exchange between Monero and 450 plus assets without having to create an account or register, and with no limits, making StealthEX a simple way to purchase Monero with crypto anonymously. MoneroTalk is also made possible from contributions by viewers and listeners like you. And supporting us is easier than ever. By typing in MoneroTalk.crypto in your Monero.com or Cake Wallet send address field to send us a tip. This week on MoneroTalk, Douglas Tuman interviews Alex of LocalMonero, the peer-to-peer Monero trading platform. The two discuss why LocalBitcoins shut down, what the issue was with their business model, the advantages and benefits of using LocalMonero, bringing back Monero Meetups, shotgun KYC, and overall a very thorough explanation of how LocalMonero works and how to get started using it to obtain Monero without KYC. MoneroTalk starts now.
Alex.
Doug.
Welcome to MoneroTalk yet again.
Thank you. It's great to be back.
Yeah, man. How many times have you been on the show? At least I know at least once, but I think it's been well. You've been on MoneroTopia too, right? There's been multiple occasions.
I think I've been on your show like way back in 2018 when you launched it, and then I came back on 2019 when we launched Agradesk.
Right. Okay.
And then you invited me on MoneroTopia once, not that long ago, actually. And this is the third time I'm on MoneroTalk. That's right.
Damn. It's been a long haul.
Yeah, it's 5.5 years, I guess, at this point.
So how's it been going, man, with LocalMonero? I mean, we saw what happened with LocalBitcoins. They shut down. It seemed like they were saying it was because of the bear market. I know I talked to you offline. You were saying that, it hasn't been the easiest of times with the bear market. So how are things going?
Right. So the sort of the going public perception of the LocalBitcoins shutdown is that the reason that they gave, and the reason that they gave is financial troubles, that it's no longer financially viable for them to continue with the business. And a lot of people took that and thought that this was just an excuse that they gave, and that the real reason was that they had some kind of pressure on them to shut down and everything. I mean, one can never fully exclude that possibility. However, I believe that we should take them at their word, because I can personally attest that this has been a brutal bear market. That maybe it's over, maybe it's not. I'm not gonna some days it feels like it's over, other days it feels like it's gonna get worse. So I at this point it's hard for me to say if it's over or not. But for local Bitcoins, I think about 30% of their market was in Russia. And
Oh wow.
they had to close down the Russian segment completely after the war started because of the sanctions regime.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So like uh, it's a Finnish company, and you know they have their own regulations in Finland that they needed to follow. And of course, in order to follow those regulations, you need to hire a lot of staff to manage the compliance work and everything. And when you're hiring staff in Finland, there's a lot of taxes associated with maintaining all that staff,
Mm-hmm.
right? So let's say you have, I don't know, a dozen, maybe 2 dozen compliance professionals in your company. Compliance professionals are not cheap. They're legally trained. Well, I mean, most of them are, and they demand legally trained person salaries. And you combine that with a relatively high tax regime that Finland has. It's not the worst in the EU, but it's pretty bad. So let's say you have about 50% of your operating income that goes to various tax expenses,
Okay.
and then you have a bunch of personnel that you need to upkeep. You need to, I assume, have them be at an office in Finland. Office space in Finland, I assume, is not cheap. And then you're operating under relatively thin margins in 2022, and then, well, I'm assuming it's relatively thin margins, and then February happens, the war starts, and a month later you have to cut off 30% of your user base, and who knows how many percent of the volume, the transaction volume. So if your margin is less than 30%, your profit margin,
Mm-hmm.
well then you're now going bankrupt slowly. You're bleeding money,
Mm-hmm.
and they've been in this state for the entirety of 2022, right? And they only shut down now in what was it, February of 2023?
Yeah, it was just like within the past month, I think it happened. Yeah.
Yeah, the past month. So almost exactly a year after the war started, I guess. So they basically tried. Well, the way I'm reading the situation is they basically tried to hang on for a year, and they gave up. They're not getting the Russian segment back anytime soon. That's, I think, pretty clear. Maybe they were hoping for a quick resolution of the
Mm-hmm.
war, and then they can turn the Russian segment back on. But that's obviously not going to happen. I mean, the war might end tomorrow. Someone might poison the Russian president or something like that. But you can't base your business plan upon the president of Russia being poisoned tomorrow. So you have to deal with the reality that this might go on for a long time, and you're not going to get that market share back for a long time. So, if you're bleeding money, I can see why they shut down. Yeah.
Yeah, when you put it that way, it's it starts to add up. So you think they have that big of an expense for compliance, huh?
Well, on their website, I checked. They said they have, I think, 50 employees, if I remember correctly. Now, I assume that page wasn't updated since like 2019, so they probably have more than 50 at the time of, prior to shutting down. And yeah, I mean, you need a lot of compliance professionals to deal with all the compliance costs. And it's like different levels. You have like the forward facing staff, which is like at the lowest level that handle the KYC and verification. Then you have the higher level staff that is like risk management and has to go through a bunch of data and correlate this with that. people that review the decisions of those staff. You have someone that directly reports to some regulatory authority. That's probably going to be the highest like ranking of the compliance officers, and that person's going to have a very big salary. So it is a lot of expenses. Yes.
Now, so is LocalMonero facing all these same expenses and compliance constraints?
Not at the moment, because we're not regulated in the same way that LocalBitcoins was regulated.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just a peer-to-peer trading platform where it's just a forum to buy and sell for people, and the trades are settled in a non-custodial way. Whereas LocalBitcoins had rather a different system, and they operate under a different jurisdiction, obviously. So for now, at least, we don't face the same compliance costs. Now, that may change in the future, of course. And if that does change in the future, well, we're probably also going to have to shut down. Yeah, I can certainly see that happening.
Fucking government, man. Can't anything complicated. Criminals. So what was the difference then in their model of how they function? Because I thought it was similar. What's the primary difference?
There are some
You
similarities.
guys are not, because you guys basically are just connecting the buyer and the seller.
That's right.
You're not performing any of the transactions. You're not a money service business. It's just
That's right.
You're just connecting two parties that want to trade, and then they go off and do the trade on their own.
That's right.
Local Bitcoin, did it start as that and then evolve into something else?
No, LocalBitcoins actually does the settling of the trades between the parties.
Okay.
And that's the difference.
Got it.
And I mean, that's the difference in the general view of the question, but there's also the difference of where you're incorporated and what sort of laws are specific to your jurisdiction. And Finland is part of the rather more strict jurisdictions when it comes to deeming a certain business as needing to do the compliance or not.
Mm-hmm. Where are you guys incorporated?
British Virgin Islands at the moment.
Nice. At the moment. That could change any day. As
Oh,
needed.
of course.
As needed, of course.
No, of course. It's
navigating.
It's the nature of the business. Yeah, we have to stay nimble.
Shit, man. So why do you think local Bitcoin didn't like try to pivot and avoid these regulation slowdowns? Or I guess they just got kind of caught up in their business and were unable to.
Well,
backtrack.
If I had to guess, and this is purely speculation because you would have to know the minds of the owners of the company to really answer that question. But what I'm guessing is they just didn't want to leave Finland. You know, they're two Finnish guys. Mm-hmm. They grew up in Finland. They like to be in Finland probably. And they're like, yeah, let's do the business in Finland. And then when Finland started imposing the regulatory requirements upon them, well, I assume they had enough money at that point to not really care too much about that. So they're like, okay, sure, let's do it. We've already made tens of millions of euros running this platform for the first 5 years of its operation when they were virtually a monopoly on the market. So they probably didn't care that much in terms of their personal profit motive to maintain a level of convenience that used to exist before the KYC was implemented. And another factor I forgot to mention with LocalBitcoins is, of course, the fact that they've been bleeding clients to Paxful over the years, because unlike Paxful, which continued to improve and innovate their platform as time went on, LocalBitcoins didn't really do much. I mean, they like the most that they did over the past couple of years was implement Telegram notifications, which was a feature that was pioneered by our platform. We were the first ones to do this. And then they implemented it after us, a couple of years after we did it.
Which feature?
And, Telegram notifications. It's when well, you know, the messaging app Telegram, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
and you have an account on the website, and let's say you're trading, you're a seller, and you're not at the computer. You want to get notifications if somebody wants to open a trade with you, right? If somebody opened a trade with you. So before we had a mobile app, the way you would get that notification if you're on the go is by subscribing your Telegram account to a bot that sends you a message whenever you get a new trade request.
Mm-hmm.
And now we have an app as well, so you get notifications that way as well.
Very cool.
And Local Bitcoins actually also, I think, released an app not long before they closed. So it seems that they did start to kind of innovate, but I guess too little, too late. Because by that point, Paxful did a redesign. Paxful had their own app as well. Paxful was doing a relatively better job at marketing themselves. And Paxful has been around about as long as Local Bitcoins.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a very natural sort of vector for clients to who are fed up with Local Bitcoins to move to. You know, it's a competitor that was basically waiting for the clients to bleed to them. And I've also heard a lot of complaints about how Local Bitcoins actually implemented the KYC, in the sense of there was often a lot of trouble with verification. People would wait for months to get verified. People would wait for months to get a response on their support ticket. So I don't know. It feels like, yeah, I don't want to judge them, because it's very difficult to manage this sort of business, and it's very difficult to make the decision to close your business, especially after being like the OG. You know, I mean, these guys are like the grandfathers of our sector. It
Mm-hmm.
felt like we lost an ancestor, you know. So I don't really want to be too critical of them. I'll just say that they were they failed to adapt too quickly, or rather, they adapted too slowly, and I think that was the main reason why they shut down.
Right. So there's the speculation that it was because of whatever regulations
Yeah.
is potentially true, just indirectly, right? Like, so it
Oh yeah.
costly for them to exist and to
In
deal with the
yes,
regulations at the same time.
in that sense, regulation can be blamed. Yes, but that's not the sense that people put into the theory. That's a different sense.
Right. The suggestion was that, you know, governments basically forced them to shut down. Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Crazy, man. So out, you know, the thing, I guess my initial thinking when I saw as to why I thought it wasn't because of the bear market, but now from what you're explaining makes a lot of sense, was also because I felt like the kind of the meme that was growing in Bitcoin was the best way to obtain your Monero was without KYC AML and to do it peer to peer, and that Local Bitcoin was providing a means to do that potentially, so that maybe they would be getting more, you know, more usage, given that kind of growing meme among the Bitcoin community.
Right.
What do you think? I mean, did you see, you sense what I'm saying? Like, so is
Oh
like
yeah.
is Local picking up, or Agora Desk picking up, you know, where they left off? Are they getting? Because I feel like that is. I mean, tell me what you think. Do you agree? Like, is that kind of the atmosphere in Bitcoin? Yeah, you know, a lot of, obviously the vast majority of people get their Bitcoin via centralized exchanges with, you know, connecting their bank account to it. But I do feel like a lot of people are learning that the best way to obtain is to try to do it in a peer-to-peer fashion.
Right. So there's two parallel streams that's going on. There's the sort of mainstream, and then there's like the smart money and the rest of the people,
Mm-hmm.
the mainstream. So the mainstream in crypto at this point, in terms of peer-to-peer trading, is still kind of stuck in Bitcoin. Probably because, and this is speculation, Bitcoin simply is a much more popular cryptocurrency. In fact, it's probably the most popular cryptocurrency.
Sure, definitely.
Not a lot of people know about Monero. Those that do know about Monero, they usually also know about LocalMonero, because in the Monero space, we've been around for a long time, and people usually, see us here and there and mentioned and talked about sometimes. So the people who are aware of Monero are usually aware of LocalMonero. Whereas in Bitcoin, like let's say LocalBitcoin closes down, they usually aren't going to immediately think of Agrodesk or think of Monero and go to LocalMonero. Because usually if they thought of Monero, they'd probably not even be trading on LocalBitcoins at that point. They'd probably already have moved either to LocalMonero or maybe to a centralized exchange that trades Monero. At the same time, if you're the kind of person that's into Bitcoin and you've traded on LocalBitcoins before, you've probably heard of Paxful, because again, Paxful has been around about as long as LocalBitcoins has. And like if you Google LocalBitcoins alternative, the first thing you're going to get is Paxful. And that's where people are going to go. So it's, the question of peer-to-peer trading, obviously, yeah, with the latest news, with all the scandals that happened with FTX, with Celsius, people are really starting to be more conscious about the problems with maintaining a crypto economy that's dependent so much upon these massive points of centralization. So people are moving to peer-to-peer. That's a good thing. The market is moving to a more stable configuration, right? It's regulating itself into a more stable configuration. Obviously, centralized exchanges have their place. But most people can probably do with peer-to-peer, especially if they're not day traders, if they just want to use crypto as a medium of exchange or store of value throughout their life. Peer-to-peer is more than sufficient. And if you're traveling a lot, peer-to-peer is more than sufficient. In fact, peer-to-peer may be even preferable because having the peer-to-peer option allows you to access payment methods locally in the community. And different communities might have different payment methods, right? Whereas a centralized exchange generally can only process a very small range of payment methods, such as a bank transfer. So definitely peer-to-peer should be getting more attention. And I think as crypto becomes more mainstream in terms of day-to-day usage, right? There's a lot of mainstream crypto adoption in the finance sector, in the sense of people like to be trading it, right? Just as a day trading type of activity. And there's a lot of adoption in terms of investment, right? Where you just hodl and forget. But if we're talking about just day-to-day usage, where you go to a cafe and you pay for your coffee, and then you go to the supermarket and then you pay your utility bills, et cetera, compared to the adoption that has happened in the financial market, it's pretty small. So as that proportion of adoption increases, I think way more people are going to be starting to use P2P, because it's just so much more convenient to use P2P in that kind of a situation. And when if they discover Monero, I'm sure they'll be able to find LocalMonero as well. Whereas for Bitcoin, there's a lot of pre-existing players that have dominated the space since the early days, such as Paxful, that perhaps they won't find out about Agrodesk. They might find out about Agrodesk if once they log into Paxful, they see that they need to go through a bunch of KYC and they feel like they don't want to do that. Well, then they might start looking for alternatives to Paxful and then stumble upon Agrodesk.
Yeah.
But as you can see, it's a more removed process. There's multiple steps to discovering Agrodesk under these conditions. So I think truly, primarily, the sort of person that would be more inclined to use P2P would probably be more inclined to use Monero as well, right? As you alluded to in your question. So I think it's just a question of, number one, adoption of crypto as a day-to-day payment method. And number two, a question of the mainstream, as opposed to just the smart money, realizing the advantages of Monero over Bitcoin.
What would you say? I mean, I do feel like there is a hesitation, though, among, you know, a normie, right, to start using something like a local Monero or Agordesk or what was of local Bitcoin. I feel like they think I feel like there's a more of a there isn't more of a barrier entry, but there's this idea in people's minds that there is, as opposed to a centralized exchange.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Like, it's easy to overcome that fear once you tried it for the first time. Then you see how easy it is.
Right, but there's that barrier of entry, right? It's the first time, then it's like no brainer, right? Then it's like, why wasn't I using this all along? But I feel like there is that little
there is
barrier,
right? Honestly, it's probably just a question of marketing to overcome that barrier. So, you know, when we have large amounts of money to throw around for marketing, we might try to fix that problem. Or we might have, like, you know, we used to have back in the early days of, I mean, not early, I guess back in 2017, 2018, there were these Monero Meetups that were organized all around the world just by, you know, random people who wanted to organize them. And we used to make posters for all those Monero meetups. Like, they would look like propaganda posters, you know, from the Second World War. And they would have some local Monero branding on it, just to sort of pique someone's interest to try and maybe give it a shot. And I feel like these sort of local meetups are probably a very good vector for, number one, creating a peer-to-peer market that didn't exist before, right? Such as a city that didn't used to have it, or a region that didn't used to have it. And number two, you know, during that Monero meetup session, people can actually show each other, oh, no, you know, don't be afraid of the P2P market. It's very easy, you know, check it out, you know, and then show them. Because really, that's the best type of marketing that there is when somebody that you trust, or at least somebody that you don't distrust, shows you how it's done and that it works and that it's not a difficult experience. And then you can sort of start doing it yourself, right? And that's the best way to learn something as well, is if somebody actually shows you how to do it and walks you through it. So maybe we can start organizing more Monero meetups, and maybe we can make some sort of like a Monero meetup kit that you can sort of apply for from LocalMonero.
I like that.
And then we sort of cover your expenses to a certain degree. And then in return, you have to, like, post all that stuff on social media and, you know, explain to some people how to use LocalMonero. And other people can, of course, have their own little incentive structures. You know, Cake can have its own incentive structure, and Monerujo and all the other businesses that might be interested in this. I think this can be a good grassroots sort of movement. Yeah.
I like it. Yeah, we do, we do a meetup here in New York. We haven't done one in a while though. Yeah, it's become like kind of a once every 6 months thing. But yeah, no, I think that's a great idea.
You know what the main problem with this idea is? Sorry for interrupting
Yeah.
what you were about to say. I think the main problem with this idea is that the sort of people that would be into Monero are not the sort of people that would want to show their faces to each other.
I've struggled with that for quite some time. We've done the Monero meetups here in New York. We've done, throwing the Monero conference, right? It's like, it's a hard group to get together, right?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
understand why. I understand why.
yeah.
But I mean, I also, I think that's, I've said this before many times. I think it's important that those that need to stay anonymous stay anonymous, like such as yourself, right? Or the devs that are building, right? There's security in that, right? We don't want people getting co-opted, right? But I also think for those that are just kind of users, I think it's important. I'm not saying they have to, but I don't think people should think there's anything wrong with going out there and being like, I'm a Monero user. Doesn't mean you have to tell everybody how much Monero you own, whether or not you own $1 worth or $10,000 worth. But it's also good to do that so that it doesn't become this thing that has, basically a bad rap, right? Where it's like, why market it as something that is assumed to be, illegal or immoral when it's clearly not.
Yes, yes. You are absolutely correct. And the thing is, like, the people that are not showing their face and not going to the meetups, they are completely on board with that and understand that, but they still don't want to show their
Yeah,
face.
No, I get it. Well, that's where I fit in, right? That's why I'm like the only, I'm the idiot out here in New York, like Monero. Like,
No, thank goodness.
you
Thank
know,
goodness there's people like you who are ready to show their faces and ready to be bold and brave about the fact that they own Monero.
what is the local? I think I've asked you this last time, but I'll obviously I love local Monero. We're out there, we're always talking about it. I always tell people, but me personally, I don't use it just because number one, we obtain Monero through our business, right?
Right,
And number two, if I want to get it, I already have my peer-to-peer connections, like I
right,
already have my people. So I don't need to, I could go straight to those that I want to trade with and I can
right.
do those trades. But in New York, what is the current local Monero situation? I always tell people, how they can go about trying to obtain Monero. How would you describe the legalities of using local Monero in New York?
In New York specifically, I wouldn't be able to comment. And there is this bit license situation,
Right.
so I'm not exactly clear on that. And a lot of
Gray area.
traders,
Because I
yeah,
mean,
it's
they're not, as long as my understanding, how I describe it to people, and
mhm,
you can chime in if you want, or you don't have to, is that as long as people aren't doing it as a business, and they're just doing it out of need, right? I have Monero. I need to turn it into some cash. I'm not doing this as a business to make money off these trades. But once in a while, I exchange my Monero into cash. Then there's really nothing that can be said of that. There's no law that I know of, in New York where people can't, you know, change their Monero into dollars out of need, as long as they're essentially not being a money transmitting business. They're not in the business of selling Monero.
right. Yeah, I can't offer any legal advice. Certainly not in New York. So what you're saying sounds correct to me, but I've also seen traders on the platform explicitly refusing to serve customers from New York.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, as you say, it's a bit of a gray area with New York specifically. Yeah.
Right. And we did see that one issue. I guess there's been multiple issues, but with local Bitcoin in Florida is the one that I recall, where somebody was basically, I don't remember what came of it, but they were basically accused of being, needing a money, a money transmission license for their local Bitcoin activity. But yeah, once again, I think in that case it was because they were, you know, trying to run it as a business as opposed to just casually making peer-to-peer trades.
Yeah, all I can say on that is laws vary by jurisdiction, by state. So definitely, if you want to be clear, you have to ask a local lawyer, and that's the only way to do it, really.
So what would be your your quick elevator pitch? Somebody's on the fence. They're currently using a centralized exchange. They want to obtain Monero without KYC. What should they do on local Monero? What's the process? Like, why should they not be? Like, we're talking about this kind of initial onboarding friction that's there. Why shouldn't they view it as differently from a centralized exchange? What's the process? How is it
Oh,
as easy as, if not easier than?
well, look, you go on the website or you download the app, and you sign up, which requires just a username and a password. And by the way, we are one of the only companies in the entire world that does not, I repeat, does not impose ridiculous password requirements on their users. You don't have to put a special character if you don't want to. It doesn't have to contain a number and a letter and an uppercase letter and a lowercase letter and all that. You can put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 as your password. That's the only requirement. It has to be 8 characters minimum. Sorry. But apart from that, any password goes. So, you don't have to even think about, am I going to have to whip out my password manager and generate one of those 72 character long passwords it's just so much friction. No, you just username, password. All right, you're on the website. Wonderful. Pick any trader that you want, any payment method that you want. Click on the buy button or tap on the buy button if you're using an app. Type in the amount of the trade. Read the terms, obviously. Then type in the amount of the trade. Press open trade. The seller will tell you exactly what you need to do to transfer the money to them. Then once that's done, let's say it's a Cash App deal. They give you the cash tag. You transfer the cash to the cash tag as you normally would. And then the seller sees that you sent the money and finalizes the trade, and you're done. That's it. You can be in and out in 5 minutes.
Beautiful. So you need this clip on your website, right? Like, yeah, it's as easy as that.
Actually, I think we do have a video explainer, but I think it hasn't been updated. We need to update it.
Yeah.
And we have step-by-step guides, but nobody likes to read. So yeah,
you
you do
even like creating a password, let alone read, right?
Yeah, exactly. And actually, we don't require an email either. It's just a username and a password. And again,
it's very nice. I'm the type, I'm very sensitive to friction. I'm like, I'm like the ultimate lazy digital person. I'm like,
No, me too. I feel the same way. Any extra field that I need to fill in, like it ticks me off immediately. If a website starts being hissy about my password being too insecure, like I'm an adult, I can handle my own, security model. Thank you very much.
Exactly.
No, but yeah, so we're doing it as quick and easy as we can.
What is the most popular payment method that people are using?
It depends on the region, I guess.
Do you have any metrics on that at all?
I don't have the metrics specifically. I can say just basically by looking at the if you open the website and you click on the payment methods button, the first 10 payment methods that you see in a given region are the most popular payment methods in a given region. So just off the top of my head, if it's for the United States, I would assume it would be Cash App and PayPal and probably crypto swaps. Oh, a lot of people, they have no idea that you can actually swap crypto to crypto on LocalMonero and AgroDesk. So if you have Monero and you want to exchange it to Bitcoin, or you have Monero and you want to go to USDC, or actually basically any coin you can think of, you can totally do that. And it's fast, it's easy, just like the Cash App trade that I described. And you would often actually get rates that are even better than you get on like the instant exchanger websites. So you have like websites like Change Now or Fixed Float or not Shapeshift, Sideshift, and that stuff like that. And they would give you like a 1.6% commission on the trade, and then you can often find offers on LocalMonero that's like 1.2%, maybe even 1%. And people don't know that. People think that LocalMonero is just for cash to or online payment methods like Cash App. No, it's crypto to crypto as well, and it's just as fast and easy, and it's more private, and certainly more private than a centralized exchange, but even more private than stuff like Change Now, because Change Now, they can collect KYC occasionally from people.
Yes.
If they think that a transaction is suspicious for some reason, they do have the right to require KYC at any point. Whereas sellers on LocalMonero, generally I've never heard of any seller doing shotgun KYC on the platform. So basically never happens as far as I know.
Well, do some of them announce ahead of time if they're collecting KYC?
Oh yeah. Actually, if KYC is going to be part of the trade, then the seller must and will put that very clearly in their terms of trade. And we have not a zero tolerance, but like a minus 5,000 tolerance of sellers that do shotgun KYC. So if anyone ever does shotgun KYC meaning you take someone's money first and then you require KYC. Yeah, that's what we call shotgun KYC. Shotgun KYC is, we give you a very stern warning. And if you do that again, we're going to ban you from the platform if you ever do that. So a seller has to be clear that they do require KYC in their terms. We allow sellers to require KYC, obviously, because sellers have their own risks that they need to be thinking of and their own requirements. So any individual seller may impose KYC if they wish to, but they have to be clear about it in the terms. Yeah. And the terms of trade, just generally, are the contract between the buyer and the seller. And we're big believers in the free market. So we allow traders generally to put whatever terms they wish into the terms of trade. If both parties agree, well, then it's a legit contract, right? So that's how we adjudicate disputes. The terms of trade is basically the main sort of document that we use to adjudicate any kind of dispute between a buyer and a seller, which in of themselves, the disputes are pretty rare. I'd say about, I don't know, over 99% of trades go through without any kind of dispute.
I'm looking at the list. Yeah, actually, cash by mail is the top choice in the US, which initially I was like, well, that's interesting. That's a little bit, there's a little bit more, I feel like a little bit more of a barrier with that. But obviously, if you want, it's the most anonymous way, right, to do it, as opposed to...
I think the main reason cash by mail is so attractive to a lot of people is not that it's anonymous necessarily, but it's because it's irreversible. So a lot of the payment methods that
That makes sense.
are used, like Cash App or PayPal or bank transfers, sellers can very often get into a situation where the buyer reverses the payment after the trade is finalized. It happens very often to sellers, especially inexperienced sellers who don't sort of screen their buyers to try to avoid that kind of a situation. So having an irreversible payment method like cash by mail, like cash deposits or cash at ATM, or cryptocurrency is a very popular payment method, also because it is irreversible. So irreversibility really is I think the main reason why some subset of payment methods are more popular than others.
That makes sense. So what does happen in that instance where, you know, somebody goes and they pay with I don't know, Cash App? I don't know if you could reverse in that. I guess you could, or one of these ones where it's easier to kind of roll back your payment. What does happen in that scenario to the seller?
So it depends on the payment method and it depends on the region. So let's say it's a bank transfer, and the seller receives a bank transfer, then finalizes the trade. The buyer gets their Monero, leaves, and then a couple of days later, the seller notices that the transfer is being reversed. Generally, step one would be for the seller to try and talk with the financial institution that is responsible for maintaining their account. So in the case of a bank transfer, it's the bank that received the transfer. Now, sometimes banks are cooperative. Sometimes they're not that cooperative. So there are a lot of banks that, if you explain to them what happened, if you say, okay, we had a trade on LocalMonero, this is the payment that the buyer provided, and I provided him with the coins. So it's just a normal deal. And then they show the receipt from LocalMonero. You can download like a PDF from LocalMonero that shows the trade and the trade information and all that stuff. And you show that to the bank. Sometimes, I'd say about 50% of the time, but this is just off the top of my head. It might be actually much better than 50%. Might be much worse too. Sometimes the bank will say, yeah, okay, that's legit, no problem. We're going to get you the money back. And then the seller gets to keep the money, and everything's okay. Other cases where the bank is not cooperative, even if you show them the trade receipt, even if the website, even if LocalMonero, writes an email to the bank confirming the story of the seller, saying, yes, this is what happened. This is a legit trade that happened between these two people. We can confirm that there's no funny business involved. And the only funny business that's involved is the buyer reversing the payment. And then the bank can still be uncooperative. Well, in that case, unfortunately, assuming that the buyer is gone and unreachable, because sometimes there can be cases where the buyer's bank, for some reason, reversed the transfer. Maybe it deemed the transfer to be unusual and high risk, and there was some kind of automatic system that reversed the transfer for the buyer's own protection. That can also happen. And in those cases, usually the buyer will show up and apologize, and help resolve the situation. But, other cases where the buyer was actually malicious, or it was something like a stolen bank account or whatever other fraud that may have happened, and the seller's bank is not cooperative, well, unfortunately, in that case, there's nothing really that we can do for the seller. So the seller is left holding the bag in that situation.
Right. It's at their own risk.
It is. And that's why we always warn our sellers to, if you're using reversible payment methods, you have to understand that it's very high risk. And if your bank or if PayPal or if, whatever you're using, if the administration is uncooperative, you're risking holding the bag. So you might have to do some sort of screening of your buyers, whether that involves full KYC or that involves, asking them to send you a text from the phone number that is connected to a PayPal account or a Cash App account, because a lot of these sort of payment systems, you have a phone number that's associated with the account. So maybe you don't have to do full KYC ID verification, but simply sort of sending a text message from the phone number that's connected to the account is enough to verify to a certain extent that this isn't some kind of stolen bank account that's being used or something. And, every seller has to approach this with their own personal security model and risk assessment, risk tolerance. And that's basically how the market operates. It's a free market in that sense. There's no like platform enforced KYC ID verification system. Every seller has to decide for themselves what sort of risks they're willing to take on.
That makes sense. And that's why we're seeing such a large cash as being the largest, perhaps, request for the sellers.
That's right. The sellers,
less risk.
That's right. It's the safest way for the seller. Yeah, because there's no reversibility on that.
Now, from the buyer's perspective, there are protections there, right? Because there you have the seller has to put up a bond. Correct?
That's right. Yes, the buyers are very safe. In like, there's basically no way for the sellers to scam them, and the only way, I guess, actually no, I'm thinking of early finalization, which is again a scam that would be used against the seller, not the buyer. So yeah, buyers are very safe. Like there's basically no way for them. Oh, actually, there's one way. If they cancel the trade after paying, right? Because that releases the bond, right? So you can't cancel the trade if you've already paid. If you've already paid, you have to mark the trade as paid. And if the trade is marked as paid, then the seller cannot cancel the trade. Only you, the buyer, can cancel the trade. So just make sure that you don't cancel the trade after you've made the payment to the seller, and you'll be safe.
Oh, so like in the scenario where the buyer accidentally cancels the trade or something?
Yeah, there are cases.
They put cash in the mail, they send the cash. Cash is received, and then they hit cancel.
Not like that usually, but
I'm trying to understand the scenario.
Okay. No, like a more instant payment method such as Cash App, for example.
Okay.
There is a certain timer that initiates when a trade is opened. That timer is for 60 minutes. So after a trade is opened, the seller cannot cancel the trade for 60 minutes. And if, let's say, you send a payment and you didn't push the I have paid button, there is a special button called I have paid that the buyer sees. And they need to press that button, because if they don't press that button after they paid, then the seller will be able to cancel the trade after 60 minutes.
Got it.
So there have been cases where sellers canceled trades after buyers made the payment, but they haven't pushed the I have paid button.
Got it.
Yeah. And usually it's just accidental, because sellers might have a lot of trades that they need to process. So they just look at the status of the trade and they see that it's not paid. Well, it's marked as not paid, right? Whereas it actually might have been paid already. And the seller just cancels the trade without looking at the bank account balance to confirm that that they've been paid, because they would assume that the buyer would have pushed the button if they did make the payment. But usually these sorts of cases are resolved by our staff afterwards. It's a bit of a headache, but
Right. The
it's
seller at that point would be like, oh, okay, well, I did receive the money, so
that's right.
now I'll send the transaction, because they don't want to get a bad review.
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So it's going to be like a delayed sort of experience for you if you do end up in that situation, because we're going to have to contact the seller, and then the buyer, and then we're going to have to make sure that everything's okay. Sometimes they resolve it between themselves just in the trade chat of the canceled trade, but yeah, other times the buyer does contact staff. There's also cases where the seller might pull a scam, in the sense of they might tell the buyer to cancel, like, hey dude, I know you sent the payment, but like, can you cancel, and then we can reopen this trade for I'll give you a better rate, or something like that. And then, but you just have to cancel this trade, right? I can't give you a better rate if you don't cancel this trade. This scam is extremely rare, but I've seen it. Again, as long as you don't cancel after making the payment, you're gonna be fine.
You hear that, people? If you're buying, don't listen to your seller if he tells you to cancel. Do not cancel.
If you made the payment, press the I have paid button and do not cancel, unless and until you get your money back, if the trade for some reason is not being followed through.
And then what are the mechanics of the bond? So if I'm a seller, somebody's buying whatever $200 worth of Monero off of me, I have to put up a $200 bond.
That's correct.
In what form? In
Monero.
Okay.
Yeah.
But do you accept other forms? Or obviously just
no.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, just the Monero.
And so it's not that me as a seller, I'm locking up $200. It's set, the bond is separate, right? Because I guess you guys as local Monero, you're not releasing that payment to.
That's right.
Right, because you don't want to be held accountable as
that's correct
a money transmitter, I guess, at that point, right?
That's correct.
Reasoning.
Yes.
So it's that they place a bond. They then send, once the deal is made, they, as an individual, as a seller, send the money directly to the buyer, send the Monero directly to the buyer, and then you, as local Monero, you give the bond back to.
That is correct.
Okay. Cool. All right, man. I know we've been through these things in the past. I think it's good to go over too for those that are tuning. I know people are tuning in with their ears up, especially those that are like on the fence about getting into trying to obtain Monero peer to peer. I think this was like a very good chat where it will help people take the leap.
Yeah, and if people have any questions, we're very responsive, like everywhere. But we're most responsive on Telegram and Matrix. Back in the olden days, I would announce on MoneroTalk, talk to us on Telegram. But now Matrix is all the rage. Mm-hmm. So people should be using Matrix because it is end-to-end encrypted and decentralized, unlike Telegram. Telegram can be encrypted, but it's not encrypted by default, and there's no encryption in group chats. It's only in the direct messages. Mm-hmm. So yeah, you should be using Matrix.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we use it just because we use it as a group, right? So it's already like a public domain, right? Where we have 500 people, 600 people in a room, so it's like
that you can bridge,
there, right? Yeah, no, we're bridged to Matrix. We are.
Yeah.
But definitely, yeah, for peer to individuals talking, people should be using Matrix over Telegram for sure. Even the secret chats, right? There's theory out there that the secret chats may not be all that secret as well.
Oh, really? I mean, I've read criticisms that they use non-standard encryption algorithms for it, but I've never seen an actual demonstrated vulnerability in those encryption algorithms.
I heard surveillance report talking about it. There's rumor, it's just rumors at this point, but who knows? It could just be FUD. All I saw you guys were advertising on Reddit. That's cool.
Ah, yeah, yeah,
On the cryptocurrency Reddit forum, which has like 6 million people, right?
yeah, yeah. That's right.
So is that something new that people have just started advertising there? Because I mean, it seems like the perfect idea, the perfect venue for
It
getting the
is a
word
new
out.
thing. And they don't call it they don't really call it advertising. I mean the moderators of the subreddit who I talked to about this, they see this like as a moon burning enterprise. Like they have moons. I'm still not fully up to speed on what all that is, but
I
uh,
was just learning about it myself yesterday when I saw them up there. I'm like, oh, moon. What the hell's a moon?
yeah, what's a moon? But a moon apparently is some um, coin that they emit to people who comment on the subreddit or something like that. And apparently, you're also supposed to, like, we also did an AMA on the subreddit
Mm-hmm.
at the same time, and we've heard some people tell us that the moons, that they needed to pay moons to ask a question in the AMA or something. I don't know. It's again, I have no idea what they're. I mean, sounds like a big enterprise with all these moons, and there's a lot of like CoinGecko involvement in moons, as far as I understand. So I think CoinGecko is somehow also involved with that. That's probably why they had their banner up before ours.
Got it. Are you seeing some good conversions there? Like people coming into local Monero from the banner? Do you, or I guess maybe you wouldn't necessarily know.
Yeah, the thing is, like, we didn't see any direct measurable increase in conversions or users from that banner. I have to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, you need to be objective in measuring this because one might be exposed to the banner today, but only use the platform in a month. And you have no way of sort of connecting the initial exposure from the banner to the eventual use of the platform a month later.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, if they hadn't seen that banner, they wouldn't know about AgroDesk and they wouldn't go there, right?
Yeah,
So these
definitely. Yeah.
there is, I think, a quote from someone that if you only advertise once, you're throwing money away because you need to advertise like on the
Times.
first time nobody's going to remember it, the second time somebody's going to remember it, the third time people are going to ask their wife, the fourth time there's some kind of like
Yes.
limerick associated with it, uh, and you need like 7 exposures or something before people actually respond to the advertisement.
No, that's cool. We might look into that for perhaps maybe for MoneroTopia getting the word out.
Yeah, yeah, definitely.
So what do you see as being the future of local? I mean, obviously you guys are, focused on doing what you do best. What do you see as areas of growth or now like new things you may add or do? Or is there anything you have anything up your sleeve?
We always have something up our sleeve, and we never reveal it ahead of time. I'm sorry, Doug.
All right. I tried. How about like obviously there's multi cryptos that you could obtain on there, right? How about like things like using gold backs to purchase your Monero instead of like are those options that are up? I guess anybody could do whatever they want, but are
Yeah,
those things that
goldbacks are already available
okay?
on local Monero, and there's actually been recently a thread on the Monero subreddit advertising silver in exchange for Monero. I don't know if you've seen that thread or not.
No, I haven't.
Yeah, and he has it got a lot of upvotes, and he has the guy that's doing that. He has actually an ad up on local Monero where he exchanges silver ounces for Monero, and it's listed under cash by mail, even though it's not actually cash but silver. So
Right.
it's
So why is
silver
that?
by mail.
Because you haven't made another category or something.
Yeah, we don't have a silver by mail category.
You gotta add it, man. You
Yeah.
gotta add these
No,
things.
but I mean we have silver as a currency on the platform. So you can
Okay.
select silver, and then you can select any payment method as the payment method, and then you'll see all the offers for silver. So obviously, if it's a silver, if this currency is silver and the method is cash by mail, the implication is that you put the silver in the mail.
You gotta dumb these things down for us, man. Come on.
Sorry.
Like, why aren't I getting my silver through the internet? Oh wait, that's cryptocurrency.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So where are you see? Do you have any like metrics on where you see the most usage, like countries, regions?
It's very globally evenly distributed. I mean, apart from like undeveloped regions of the earth. Like if you talk about developed economies, it's very evenly distributed.
Okay. Just looking. Yeah. No. That those are my questions, man. Thank you so much as always. I think this was a good one. This was very informative. Can you stick around and answer a few questions?
I'd
in the
love
space?
to. I love answering questions.
Awesome, guys. So we're gonna do question time in the spaces. If you guys have questions, now is the time to raise your hand, and we will make our way over to the spaces. Alex, anything you want to close out with over here in the interview portion of this show?
Um,
Anything you want to get out there?
don't buy Monero.
But if you do,
But if you do, don't buy it on LocalMonero, especially.
All right, Alex, thank you so much, man.
A pleasure.
And thank you for participating in MoneroTopia. I appreciate that. In the Adoption Alley section, we'll be showcasing you guys.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
So I appreciate that, though.
A pleasure.
Yeah, so let's move over. So you could just move over to your phone. You could shut this down, walk away from this, and just go over to the spaces, and I'll see you over there.
Okay, got it.
All right. Who we got? We got Tuxedo. Awesome. Add a speaker. And then where's Local? Local hasn't popped in here yet. See if you want to message him. Hopefully he'll jump in here. Tuxedo, what's going on?
Hey,
How are you?
I'm all right. How's it going?
Good, man. Good. Hopefully Local will come in here so we can answer questions.
Yeah, I did have a couple questions for him.
Yeah, let's give him a second. Anybody else that wants to ask a question, please just kind of request to speak now so we can be ready for him. What'd you think of the convo? Were you listening in, Tuxedo?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I've been listening.
Cool. All right, we got Lip. Up here he is. Here's Local. Local, I'm going to invite you to speak. Hopefully that works. Or Local, request to speak if you can. Oh, okay. There you go. You're good. All right. So Tuxedo, what's your question?
Hey, so I don't use Venmo or Cash App. I have primarily used Kraken over the past year to obtain my Monero because that's like one of the only centralized exchanges in the US you can actually buy Monero at, and the fees are pretty low. But what would be the main privacy advantage of using Cash App and Venmo? I'm assuming the KYC is like way lower. Like you don't have to send a picture, a selfie with your ID, or give your social security number, all that stuff. But I'm assuming you still need to connect a bank account, a US bank account, and maybe give them your phone number and stuff like that.
Yeah, Local can chime in, but I believe it's just that people don't, they don't know that you're purchasing Monero, right? So if you're using Cash App on Local Monero, Cash App sees that you made a purchase, so let's say $200, but they don't know that you use that for the purposes of buying Monero. But go ahead, Local. Maybe I'm not touching on it.
No, I think actually that's a very good answer, and I would add on that. Am I audible? Is everything working correctly? I haven't used Spaces before.
Smooth as always, man.
Okay. So what was I saying? Oh, right. Basically, yeah, number one, Cash App doesn't know that you're buying crypto. Number two, if you're buying on Kraken, right, and you're submitting all your documents and everything, and it doesn't necessarily have to be Kraken. It can be any other centralized exchange. That centralized exchange is a nexus for a lot of valuable information for hackers to steal and disseminate in the dark web. And then some people might take those databases of information and use it for blackmail, extortion, swatting, right? Like if you know where a person lives, and a lot of these services, they do require that you submit an address proof. So if they know what you look like, because there's ID pictures, they know your name, they know your address, right? And they know that you have a certain balance on a centralized exchange. I mean, of course, whether they know that or not depends on how severe the data breach was on the centralized exchange. But assuming worst case scenario and the entire database is leaked, and they know how much you've been trading, right? So they can pick out people that seem to have the most in crypto, and especially crypto that is untraceable, right? They might want to target you for extortion, blackmail, etc. Whereas if you're doing it P2P, even if you're using Cash App, which obviously you're required to submit your information in some degree to Cash App. With Cash App, the only person that's exposed to the fact that you're buying crypto is the seller, essentially. So unless that seller is basically like a dedicated darknet guy who's fishing for information, which is highly unlikely, they have much better ways of getting information, then you're safe from that scenario. And if you switch from using Cash App to something that is even more untraceable, say cash by mail, for example, or cash at ATM, or cash deposit, well, then even the Cash App organization vector is completely excluded from this whole chain. So that would be my answer.
Okay. I see. I'm assuming in this case, what would make the transaction like anonymous to the fact that you're buying Monero, they would probably give you some kind of code for the invoice, like I'm paying for blah blah blah, whatever, but not actually paying for Monero.
Yeah, generally speaking, you don't even really need to put any reference because the seller is aware that you're about to pay a certain amount to his account. So it can be just a silent transfer in that sense.
Okay, that's really cool. Thanks. I guess the only downside to that I've noticed is that the fee seems to be pretty high for using the Cash App or like Venmo, but I'm assuming that's based on what you said earlier, where it's very easy for them to get scammed because it's super easy as a buyer to like reverse the transaction with like any of these services.
That is exactly correct. You have very good insight into this. Yes, the sellers need to cover their risks, and their risks are significant, so they are forced, in a sense, to charge higher fees to compensate for some of that risk.
Nice, cool. Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.
Fantastic question and great answer. And Tuxedo, hope to see you down at MoneroTopia. I know that might be something you may be doing. Lip, go ahead, man.
Hey, how you doing? All right, so my question was, how do you feel about PayPal out of curiosity, opposed to Cash App, comparing the two on privacy?
Well, PayPal is certainly way worse when it comes to dealing with reversals because they pretty much always side with the buyer. But in terms of privacy, I don't really have an opinion, to be honest. I'm not sure that there's any big privacy advantage, one versus the other.
All right, that was very insightful, but I was curious on one versus the other, so thanks for your insight on it.
My pleasure.
Thank you, Lip, as always, for participating. Anybody else have a question? Anybody else? Don't be shy. Request to speak. All right, if no more, I mean, I think we covered a lot. Alex, thanks again, man. Greatly appreciate it. Thanks for jumping in here and asking a few follow-up questions.
My pleasure.
And
My pleasure.
yeah, just quick shill, guys. MoneroTopia. I'll post the link for those of you that don't know it. Is happening in Mexico City in May. MoneroTopia.com. Yeah, please come down. We're going to have tons of speakers, 2 days of talks, and plus a welcome party on the 5th on Cinco de Mayo. It's not going to be a Cinco de Mayo party for those that don't align with with celebrating Cinco de Mayo in Mexico. It just happens to be on Cinco de Mayo. There'll be festive celebrations that take place on Cinco de Mayo, and then 2 days of talks. First day will be focused primarily on Monero only. We have a bunch of devs coming down. It's going to be fantastic. And then second day, we have a lot of different privacy tech projects and privacy coins that are going to be presenting, and then other projects in the ecosystem that are helping to grow Monero adoption. Talks on agorism. A big part of the theme of MoneroTopia is just growing Monero actual usage. So talking about things like using LocalMonero to obtain your Monero in the most ideal way possible without KYC. And talks on how to actually live off of and spend Monero and build a parallel economy outside of state control. So anybody that's interested, it's monerotopia.com. Check it out, and you could email us if you have any questions, you want to participate in any other way as opposed to just being an attendee. monerotopia@protonmail.com. All right, guys, we do these talks every week. Thanks again. Thanks everyone. Alex,
Hey, Doug.
go ahead, man.
Doug. Can I ask you a question? Is that allowed?
I
Are you going to run for Congress again?
Shit. Yeah, that's a tough question. Probably not. It's possible. If I feel like it's something I really need to do, I will do it. But it was a great experience. I just feel like I'm better off serving the Monero community and trying to build unstoppable digital cash than going onto the floor of Congress with the same end goal. I feel like you could do more from here, but it's a possibility. What do you think, man? What do you think I should do?
It's very hard because on the one hand, the kind of person that you are not going to jive well with Congress, right? But then on the other hand, we're never going to have people like you in Congress if people like you never go to Congress. So it's a catch-22. Yeah. I can't obviously ask you to sacrifice your soul to the devil for this.
I tried to do it, and I saw how the sausage gets made, so to speak, and it's very difficult to stay true to your morals and who you are as a person as you go through these processes. It's very difficult, because you're up against powerful forces that are trying to influence you in different ways. The reason I did it the first time is because I have political connections locally where I live, so I was able to utilize those for purposes of launching my campaign. But I didn't. It became was really the most difficult part for me, was dealing with the parties themselves and the powerful groups that have influence in those areas. And at the end of the day, that's what politics is. So it becomes very difficult because you find yourself negotiating your morals so that you can align with different groups, and it becomes very difficult. So if I did do it again, I would try to do it in an even more pure form than what I already tried the first time. But I think for me to do that, I would need Monero to be at least $1,000 a coin, and then I feel like I would have that strength, that fuck you money, so to speak, to then really truly be my own man and not be open to persuasion.
Do you think you'd still be forced to run as a Republican in that sense, or would you be able to compete as a libertarian or an independent?
I would. I don't want to say, because Monero isn't $1,000 a coin yet, so I'm still in this world. So I have to be careful with what I say. But I guess you could probably get to what I'm alluding to. I would try to do it in a way where I could truly not be owned by anyone.
Nice. That answers my question, and I like the fact that you did it the first time. Honestly, you're really a hero for that, and I think you've done a great job, and thank you so much for trying at least, and I can't blame you at all for not wanting to do it again. It's totally understandable.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I don't think people realize in the Monero community how close we came too. I ran in a primarily Democratic district, and we got 45% of the vote, which was historic for a Republican in that district. And now this year, a Republican won that district for the first time in many years. And the woman that I ran against, Kathleen Rice, she didn't run again. She was the incumbent. So I like to believe the reason she didn't run again is because we kind of put some kinks in her armor. I get the strategic thing for me to have done would have been to keep on running. But for all those reasons I said, I kind of stopped at the finish line and didn't keep following through. But appreciate it, man. Appreciate you appreciating that. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll wrap it up here. Cheers, everybody. See you next week. Ciao.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this week's episode. We release new episodes every week. You can find and subscribe to our show on YouTube, Odyssey, iTunes, Spotify, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to podcasts. Go to MoneroTalk.live to subscribe for a full list of places where you can watch and listen. If you want to interact with us, guests, or other podcast listeners, you can follow us on Twitter. And please leave us a review on iTunes. It helps people find the show, and we are always happy to read them. So thanks so much, and we look forward to being back next week.